All right, welcome back to this edition of Bulwark Explains. I'm going to run through Marc Caputo's latest big hit story. It was getting traffic alerts on this one. People on Twitter are loving it. Mark,
and hating it, which is a sign of love on Twitter.
It's important to understand that folks love and hate. It's like the two fists, love and hate.
Is that a do the right thing reference? I think?
Sure. Yeah. Do the right thing. It's you got love, you got hate. So let's talk about your story here, which I'm gonna preface just very briefly. The Trump campaign is taking credit for the Walz VP selection. At the very least, they're saying, "Hey, this is at least partly our doing."
Actually, no. They're saying, "Look, we didn't want Shapiro, and we saw all of this anti-Shapiro energy out there, and so we did what we could to fuel it." Ultimately, they think that Shapiro, toward the end, looked doomed to be picked by Kamala Harris. The reason we wrote the story about the Trump campaign sort of trying to pile on de facto ally with the progressive left is that they didn't want Shapiro, and that speaks to their mindset, the Trump campaign's mindset of who they thought was tougher and why.
Well, let's talk about that because, in theory, this is the candidate that they most want to face because he does what to the Harris campaign? What does Walz do to the Harris campaign that, in their mind, weakens Harris?
I think. Sorry to keep rephrasing your questions. I think
that's fine.
I think the way the Trump campaign perceives it is, obviously they would probably prefer no one and just Kamala Harris to focus on. But what the Trump campaign wants to do is describe, frame, define Kamala Harris as dangerously liberal. That's one of their phrases. And they didn't want her to pick a centrist running mate, a moderate running mate, a Josh Shapiro running mate. And Walz, the governor of Minnesota, is a pretty progressive guy. So it makes their messaging easier. He's got a number of pieces of legislation and stances he's taken that you've seen unfold on social media pretty quickly, approving transgender therapies for minors, allowing for tampons to be in boys' bathrooms in schools. And then, of course, there is the Minnesota burning that happened, or the Minneapolis burning after the George Floyd riots. That's all stuff that the Trump campaign wanted to work with. What they didn't want to work with is an avowedly and sort of openly pro-Israel Jewish candidate who has a moderate record, supports school vouchers. That is Josh Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania, a swing state that they really want to win and perhaps need to win. It looks like Pennsylvania, out of all the states, it's the biggest of the swing states with the biggest electoral college prize, and that's the one they wanted, and they figured it'll be harder to win it if the popular governor with the job approval in the 60s is on the ballot.
Well, let's talk about what the Trump campaign is saying they actually did here, because it's one of the fascinating dark arts of campaigning is, getting stories out there, but keeping your fingerprints off it. What were they feeding to press outlets to try and get them to focus on, why Shapiro is so unacceptable to the Democratic base?
Well, one of the things they were doing, and I'm not at liberty to say because of the conditions which were shared with me, is say the specifics, but what they were taking credit for, and I had reason to believe, was sharing opposition research or just pro-Israel related research into Shapiro's past to put that out there on the internet. The information in and of itself that, for instance, Shapiro had penned, and I'm not saying this is the oppo they shop, but the information that they had helped put out there concerning Shapiro's pro-Israel positions in the past probably weren't that controversial until the Gaza war and the uproar on the left, the progressive left, over Israel and U.S. policy toward it. And what we've seen transpire over the months since was the left really doesn't like a lot of U.S. policy and Democratic lawmakers supporting that policy toward Israel that has helped fund the Israeli war effort into the Palestinian Gaza Strip. And so the more the Trump campaign figured it was helping put that information out there in mainstream media, the more it helped to gin up opposition on the progressive left, gave them stuff to talk about on social media, and sort of spooked the Harris campaign. Now, just to be clear, the Trump campaign isn't saying, like, wow, we were so smart, we did this and this is why she did that. No. And Harris's own campaign has at least put out the official narrative that she chose Walz because she had a greater chemistry with him, and she didn't have that chemistry with Shapiro. Now, we can debate the truth of that matter, pro and con. But the real story here, the deeper story, is how the Trump campaign sees the election map, sees the importance of Pennsylvania, sees the importance of defining Kamala Harris as, quote, dangerously liberal, and the importance of gaining swing voters in these Rust Belt states, many of whom are white males, who are crucial to Trump campaign's reelection effort, or election effort, depending on how you look at it.
Well, the Pennsylvania question is the big one here, right? Because this is certainly what the Trump campaign is looking at. They don't see a path to victory without Pennsylvania. It's very hard to win. I mean, I understand that you can do it, but it's very hard to get to the number you need without Pennsylvania's electoral college votes. And that, but I guess my question here is, the Harris campaign has said they don't see Shapiro as necessarily key to winning that state. They have said, we don't think any one elected official is going to help us win any given swing state, which again is a very it's an interesting conflict between the two philosophies here.
It's a defensible position. It's one of those things that depends on how you look at it. But in the Trump campaign's estimation, like, it would have just made it a lot easier for Kamala Harris to do it. That is, to win Pennsylvania. In the last time I wrote about this, and this was a few months ago, the last analysis that the Trump campaign had presented to their own donors was that if Trump wins all of the Sun Belt and South swing states, Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, North Carolina, which polling at the time showed he would, and also carried the one Nebraska district, congressional district, that's kind of an outlier in the Electoral College. He just needed to win one of the three Lake Belt or Rust Belt states, Michigan, Wisconsin, or Pennsylvania. And in their estimation, Pennsylvania was a little easier. The next one down the list is Michigan and then Wisconsin. So for them, this path to Pennsylvania doesn't become more hard with the selection of Shapiro. It's not to say it becomes easier, but it doesn't become more difficult for the Trump campaign in the Trump campaign's eyes.
The effort here by the Trump campaign is interesting to me because I had kind of looked at this and thought, well, Shapiro he's good in Pennsylvania. Obviously, he's very popular there. He could help in that state, but it does create a split with the base in another way, with the pro-labor left, with the anti-Israel left. And I'm a little bit interested if they've talked to you at all about their thinking there, about, not worrying about splitting the Democratic base versus being more focused on Pennsylvania.
Right. Well, understand that most of Trump campaign's eyes, right? Most of the progressive base that really cares about Gaza is concentrated in places like California and New York, and they're not swing states. Now, to your point, there's that issue of Michigan, Dearborn. There is a significant Arab population in there, which has been vocal. Rashida Tlaib is their congresswoman about their opposition to Israel policy of the U.S. in the Middle East. So that does exist. The fear of the Trump campaign was it's not just a state play, it's also sort of a demographic and swing voter appeal play, that Shapiro would have more appeal to more moderate and swing voters because he is the governor of a swing state with divided government and the legislative branch, and he has a more kind of heterodox Democratic profile. That is, he supports school vouchers, which unions oppose. However, all of the polling generally shows school vouchers a wedge issue that hurts the left more because there are a lot of poor, especially African-American and Hispanic voters who, when given the opportunity to use vouchers, or as the right calls it, school choice, avail themselves of that opportunity.
Yeah, yeah. How does the Trump campaign feel that Walz matches up with J.D. Vance? Because that's obviously going to be, assuming they debate. Who knows? Who knows what the debate situation is going to look like?
Right.
That is a very specific matchup that's pretty interesting. You got two kind of Midwest guys who have similar but different backgrounds. It's a fascinating matchup.
Sometimes I believe the things that folks in the Trump campaign and Trump orbit say, and sometimes I don't. And so when they're like, oh, J.D. Vance is superior to Walz, Walz is this, quisling, progressive liberal, and we will reduce him. I don't believe that. Because if you saw Walz's unveiling or whatever it was, announcement in Philadelphia on Wednesday, it was like the guy knows how to speak publicly. If you've seen him on television, he knows how to broadcast in mass media. Really good deliverer of lines. He's going to be a challenging person for Vance to debate. And I'm not saying Vance is a slouch or a moron. Like, he's a smart guy. That's going to be, I don't know if it's going to be the more interesting debate than the Harris-Trump debate. And yeah, I think the Harris-Trump debate is going to happen. I could be wrong. I'm probably being dumb for predicting it's going to happen. But in the Trump campaign's estimation, the mainstream media is in the tank for Harris. And she's rolling in dough like no candidate we've ever seen so quickly roll in dough. The social media buzz about her is amazing. The way she has consolidated the Democratic base and has rallies that are these sort of upbeat affairs really sends a strong message. So to the Trump campaign, the only way to really define her outside of buying paid media, which is not the most efficient way to use your dollars, but you got to do it in campaigns, is for Trump to get on stage and debate her. At least that is the view of some on the campaign. Now, whether that's shared by all or the principle, we'll see. But if Donald Trump wants to define or try to define Kamala Harris, that's going to be his best opportunity to do it. But this is high risk, high reward. Who knows what Donald Trump is going to show up? And who knows what Kamala Harris is going to show up? She did well handling Joe Biden in the Miami debate in 2019. I think it was June of 2019. But obviously she faded in the primary. So, we'll see.
Yeah, yeah. Anything else folks should know about the state of the campaign? What the Trump folks are up to in terms of defining?
I don't know what the Trump folks are up to, but I've written about this before. But the campaign didn't estimate that Kamala Harris would sort of blow up like this. As a Miami guy, I compare it to a hurricane, a tropical storm, finding that warm patch of water and rapidly intensifying. And for the next, 2 weeks or whenever it's going to be till the end of the Democratic convention, there's just a good chance that Kamala Harris is going to be surging or at least existing awash in lots of positive headlines, positive social media buzz. And I think the Trump campaign is sort of hang on and survive mode and hope his ballot share doesn't decrease and to do what they can.
Yeah. Well, Marc, thanks for coming on to discuss your piece today, and go check it out at Bulwark Plus. We'll link to it in the video, and I think it's a must read if you want to understand what's going on behind the scenes in these campaigns.
Thanks, Sonny. Appreciate you.